Have you ever gone to an amusement park and had a caricature drawn of yourself? How was your self-esteem afterward? Like, caricatures aren't meant to be flattering. They're meant to take the characteristics that we already are very self-conscious about in our face and our body and kind of blow them up out of proportion. So when I was in college, we went to an amusement park with a group of friends I had, and they decided to pitch in some dollars to have a caricature drawn of me. Now, I recognize that the artist has a lot to work with. Like, there's a lot of things that he could have exaggerated. But I think he knew my friends were trying to punk me. And so instead, he drew this picture, which I'm like, that's not bad. I've saved this for 30 years because it's the best photograph I have of myself. They posted little things on there, he's got a big nose, he does, and he looks like a surfer dude. So caricatures don't give a real picture of us, do they? And so it is with Jesus. We're beginning a new series today entitled Portraits of the Savior, where over the next 7 weeks as we head through Lent, heading into Easter, we're going to look at pictures of Jesus from the gospel, snapshots of Jesus that give us insight into his very nature. You see, we all have false views of Jesus. We all do. I'll never forget a professor of mine once saying this to us as a class. He said, 90% of what you believe is true, 10% is false. The problem is you don't know which is which. Like, it's very hard for us to figure out what are the things that I believe about God that simply aren't true. Sometimes we have this view of Jesus because we desire to make him in our image, that he is like us. The philosopher Voltaire wrote this. He said, in the beginning, God created man in his own image, and man has been trying to repay the favor ever since. Meaning, we're trying to write God into our own image. Or because we've only been taught some of the caricatures of Jesus. We only see particular aspects of him. And so Jesus becomes like Superman for us. Jesus becomes the champion of our own cause. Jesus becomes the servant that can never tell me no. And I'll never forget when I came to realize that Jesus is a person distinct from me. That God is a person distinct from me who has a personality and ideas and a will that is different than mine. And my task is to align my life with him, not the other way around. I want to see Jesus clearly. And I want us to see him clearly as a church. And when you're choosing pictures of Jesus, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. So I simply, as we wrestled with what picture to put on this series, I went outside and I just took a picture of our stained glass window in the front of the church that faces McDonald's, right? The Good Shepherd. And I took a picture of that and I ran it through AI to clean up, and this is what came out. And so I thought, this is safe. It's already on our church building. I can't get in trouble for the picture that I show you of Jesus. But each week, we're going to have a different picture of Jesus that I present to you, or that gives some aspect of the life of Jesus. And I want to say, like, you've got the worst seat, Rob, to see this, right? I want to say that this picture of Jesus is actually hard to understand unless I explain it, and I'll explain it in a minute. In John 10, Jesus calls himself the gate. He calls himself the door. And it's a part of his identity. It helps us dial in on who he actually was, is, and continues to be. So listen to these verses, these 10 verses from John 10 from the New Living Translation. This is what it says. Jesus says, I tell you the truth, anyone who sneaks over the wall of a sheepfold rather than going through the gate must surely be a thief and a robber. But the one who enters through the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep recognize his voice and come to him. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out, and after he has gathered his own flock, he walks ahead of them, and they follow him because they know his voice. Listen to this. They won't follow a stranger. They will run from him because they don't know his voice. Those who heard Jesus use this illustration, they didn't get it. I love that verse. Like they didn't get it. If ever at the end of the sermon you go, I don't know what he said, welcome to the club, right? They didn't get it. So he explained it to them. I tell you the truth. I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me were thieves and robbers. All who came before me were thieves and robbers. But the true sheep did not listen to them. Yes, I am the gate. Those who come in through me will be saved, or they will find safety. They will come and go freely and will find good pastures, places to eat. The thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy. My purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life, or as the King James says, an abundant life. So Jesus says, I am the gate. He says, I am the door. And here's kind of a summary what I think he's saying here in these 5 statements that I find in John 10 here. He first identifies himself as the gate or the door, whatever that may mean. He says, I'm the gate. I am the door. There isn't another. I am the gate. Secondly, he states that all who came before him were thieves and robbers. Just this real blanket statement about him exclusively being the gate or the door. And then he states that the sheep intuitively know that there is something wrong with abusive leaders. Like they intuitively know, the sheep knows when there is a shepherd that is abusive or a leader that is abusive. They won't follow that voice. Jesus then fourthly encourages people to enter through him to find safety and provision. Whatever you think, what door opens for you, the life you want, if it's not through Jesus, it's not the life you want. That's the door. He's the door. Jesus summarizes his purpose this way: to give us a rich and a satisfying life, an abundant life. Now, if you are not experiencing an abundant life, a life that is rich and satisfying, we either need to define what that means, or we haven't yet trusted through the gate to enter, because this is what he says he's giving us. He's giving us abundant life, or inviting us at least to it. And the picture I chose to represent Jesus at the gate, it may be a little bit confusing until I explain it. So this is a sheepfold or a sheep pen, at least an artist's image of what we think it may have looked like. You see, in Jesus' day, the sheepfold or the sheep pen was an enclosure where many shepherds would bring their sheep, often at night, and they'd put them in the enclosure, and either by drawing straws or by taking turns, the rest of the shepherds would go sleep while the main shepherd or the shepherd chosen that night would stay there and watch out for the sheep. In the morning, when the shepherds would come, they knew which sheep were theirs because they would make a sound or they would call out some name, and the sheep that knew that voice then would follow them out into the places of the countryside to eat. Now, what's interesting is that Jesus calls himself the gate or the door. You see, at night, let me blow this up. At night, one of the shepherds, we think, would either guard the gate or become the gate, would lay down at the entry point to protect the sheep from thieves and robbers and wolves, which mean that any sheep that were to go into the sheep pen or out of the sheep pen had to go over the gate, the shepherd that became the gate. And if there's anything that was going to come in and attack the sheep, it had to go through the gate. So this is the image that Jesus gives us when he says, I am the gate. I am the door. To get in, you go through me. To get out, you go through me. To go find provision, you go through me. To find an abundant field that you can eat and live and find joy in this life, you go through me. I am the gate. John Chrysostom, a 4th century preacher who was called the Golden Mouth, he said this. He said, when Jesus brings us to the Father, he calls himself the door. And when he takes care of us, he calls himself the shepherd. Next week, we're going to look at the good shepherd. The identity of Jesus as the gate, it's about entry. It's about a passageway into a kind of life that is being offered by the Father with the Father himself. Now, this portrait of Jesus as the gate, and especially his indictment of other leaders, calling them thieves and robbers, it comes on the heels of one of the most abusive experiences that a person had by the religious leaders during his day. It's in John chapter 9. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but you need to hear the context in order to get what Jesus is actually saying, because this is a promise and an indictment. So there was a man born blind, we are told in John chapter 9. And he's healed by Jesus. He can now see. His neighbors can't believe he's the same man, so they bring him to the religious leaders, the people that they thought were the religious gatekeepers. What's happening? Why did this man get healed by this man Jesus? They do a full investigation of the healing. They interview this man. They interview his parents. And though they can't deny that he is blind and now he sees, what they can't stomach is that this rogue rabbi Jesus is the one that did it, because he's not of them. They even gaslight this man by calling Jesus a sinner and he himself steeped in sin. And since they couldn't silence Jesus, they silenced this man. Listen to the summary or the glimpse of the story in John 9. I'm going to read quick. So for the second time, they called in the man who had been blind and told him, God should get the glory for this, because we know this man Jesus is a sinner. Side note, all abusive religious leaders use religious language. They will talk about who God is, and they use manipulative religious language in order to convince you that they're on God's side. I don't know whether he's a sinner, the man replied, but I know this: I was blind and now I can see. But what did he do? They asked. How did he heal you? Look, the man exclaimed, I told you once. Didn't you listen? Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become one of his disciples too? The religious leaders curse him and said, you're his disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know God spoke to Moses. We don't even know where this man comes from. That's really strange, the man replied. He healed my eyes, and yet you don't know where he comes from. You're the gatekeepers. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but he's ready to hear those who worship him and do his will. Ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't have done this to me. You were born a total sinner, unlike us. Are you trying to teach us? And they threw him out of church. They threw him out of the synagogue. I mean, it's a terrible thing. Like, when you live with this long enough and feel this, many of us who have experienced something to this, it may trigger some old thoughts, right? I mean, this man is just trying to respond to God's grace in his life. He's healed, he can see, and now he's thrown out by the religious leaders. Spiritual thieves and robbers. The beautiful thing when you read John 9 is that Jesus goes and finds this lost sheep. He identifies him, goes and finds him, the rejected and the abandoned sheep, who has suffered at the hands of so-called religious gatekeepers, and he explains who he is, the Son of Man. I'm standing in front of you, and the man's spiritual eyes are opened up, as well as his physical eyes, and it says he worships Jesus. Lord, I believe, he says. And then Jesus says, by the way, to the religious leaders, I'm the gate, you're not. I'm the gate. Thieves and robbers entering over the fence, sheep only knowing the true shepherd's voice, and he himself being the gate. It means this section of teaching on who Jesus is as the Savior and the gate, it's not just about what it means that he's the gate. It is also, hear this, it is an indictment of abusive spiritual leaders. It is. It's an invitation for all of us to make sure we are following the true shepherd first. For those of us in leadership, being good shepherds. And for those of us who are following, are we following good shepherds? And are we being good shepherds? This has implications on how spiritual leaders lead today. It does. In the words of George Beasley Murray, a shepherd leads the sheep, it's the butcher that drives them. And since we all are going to be led by someone, or you're following someone, or you're going to lead someone, listen, folks, it is crucial you get this image of Jesus right. If you cannot lay down the ministry, you should not be in leadership. To claim to be a Jesus follower means we also lead like Jesus. And this is why it's important. Let me pick a little. In this information age we live in, the number of doors that claim they know the truth has multiplied exponentially across the internet. There's an explosion of doors and gates, so-called internet shepherds who claim some level of spiritual authority, both religiously but also politically. You know this. In some sense, it's a remarkable day we live in where anybody with a camera, a computer, and a microphone can spread the good news about Jesus around the world. But that also means that anyone with a computer, a microphone, and a camera can act as a thief and a robber around the world. And the reality is that many of these thieves and robbers have no local community connection. They've got no church that keeps them accountable, or if they do, they have a board that doesn't check them. They don't have anybody that watches out what they're saying. And in fact, in the political world right now, there are people bad-mouthing the church on the internet because of how long it takes to get things done, because we have to check and balance each other, right? So every time someone comes in my office now and says, listen, I've been listening to a podcast, I want to go, okay, which one? Like, tell me which podcast you're listening to, because there are robbers and thieves out there, and if you don't know it, they're going to devour you, and you're not even going to know it. And I'm not saying then just listen to me, right? For goodness sakes, that's not what I'm saying. But you need to be really wise as to the false ideas that are now injected into our discussions by the speed of a click. There are so many false doors and false shepherds that we must truly get the picture of who Jesus is dialed in. This is how he would respond. This is what he thinks. This is how he treats people. This is how he calls to leadership. This is how he treated children. This is how he treated men. This is how he treated women. This is how he ate with the Pharisees. And yet he also went after the lost sheep. We need to be dialed in because he is the gate. He is the gate. He boldly refers to himself as the gate, not a gate or another gate. And listen, it's this exclusivity of Jesus that bothers a lot of us. It really does. because if he's on the throne, there's no room for me to wiggle and sit on it too. At the very least, if you're bothered by Jesus' exclusive claims as being the only gate, at least you understood what he meant. To claim that you are the entry point to the Father, like, listen to this. If I were to stand up here and say, if you're going to know God, you got to talk to me. That's arrogant. If anyone anywhere is going to know God and have eternal life, you got to go through me, Jesus claims. It's an exclusive claim. But when you compare the reality of Jesus' goodness, he's the good shepherd. When you compare the reality of Jesus' goodness with the reality that everybody else falls short of God's glory, you realize he's the only one good enough to trust your life to. Not even yourself. You're not good enough. Your mother loves you. But you're not good enough to entrust your life to. What other gates and gatekeepers and doors and doorkeepers and teachers and leaders and kings or so-called saviors, none of them are good enough and deserve our full allegiance. They aren't. The claim of being the only gate is arrogant unless it's actually true. The claim of being the only gate is arrogant unless it is true. You're going to have to forgive me for this illustration. It's the best one I could think of, right? Some of you know who Curt Cignetti is. He coached the Indiana Hoosiers to the national championship in football in 2 seasons. In 2 seasons he did this. He changed the bar for what could be done as a football coach. He took the losingest program in Division I football, in Indiana football, and turned them into an undefeated team that won then the college football championship. Early on, Curt Cignetti is at an Indiana basketball game. So now, I'm going to use the word sucks, and I don't normally do that from the pulpit, all right? So forgive me, all right? When Purdue plays anybody at kickoff, and every time the ball is kicked, the whole stands go, IU sucks. Every time. It's a thing, right? Purdue hates IU. So when Curt Cignetti was being introduced at the IU basketball game, the very first one, he grabs the microphone and he says, Purdue sucks. And so does Michigan. And so does Ohio State. This is the losingest program in the history of Division I, and he says all of the rest of them stink. He's interviewed afterward at the press conference, and they say, why do you think you can turn this program around and win? And his answer was this: it's pretty simple. I win, Google me. When we heard that, we thought, what arrogance. Now, Mark Cuban at that point had poured $20 million into the IU program, but that's a whole side thing, right? And he did it again in December, though. So $40 million, that probably helped in the open, trading back and forth, but that's not important. It's the most arrogant thing to say, I'm going to turn around this program and we're going to win the national championship. We're going to beat Ohio State. We're going to beat Purdue. We're going to beat Michigan. It's arrogant until it happened. And I am not comparing Jesus and Curt Cignetti. Trust me, my Indiana friends are already doing that, right? He walks on water there. What I am saying is this: when Jesus says, I am the only gate, it's arrogant until it is true. There is simply no one or no thing good enough to entrust your life to other than Jesus. That's it. Let me wrap up with this. Have you ever been to someone's house and you opened the wrong door, thinking it was the front door, only to find it's the closet, or worse, it's the bathroom? And what do you got to do? You're like, well, I guess I got to pretend I'm going to the bathroom now, because you went through the wrong door. You entrust your life to yourself, even to good things like education or jobs or retirement or a church, right? And if it becomes the gate rather than Jesus becoming the gate, you're going to find yourself in a restroom of life when you really want to be in the pasture eating. You get it? He's the gate.